Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Yellow Tape. I'm Julian. This is Nitty. Very happy that you guys could be joining us again. This is actually our first episode of 2022, all the way in it's February 13th. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. If you can't find love, you can find forensics. Yeah. And so we're about probably a little bit over a year into doing this, and we're just really happy that you guys are sticking with us. We're definitely sticking with it, and we have a really good episode for today, and I'll let Nitty tell you what it's about.
Thank you so much, Julian. Hello, everyone. So we have our first episode in 2022 is going to be about forensic dentistry. We both are not much aware of it, so we thought to start the year with a new topic and new information. So please listen to this episode because there's a lot of information where we talk about bite mark analysis. We talk about how to compare human bite marks versus animal bite marks and how they can be used in forensic analysis, and how to become a forensic dentist and stay in the umbrella of doing forensic crime scene investigation work. So I hope you guys like the episode, and please stay tuned. And of course, do not forget to like, share,
and subscribe, buddies.
So true, so true. So please stay tuned and do not forget to hit the like, share button. But Julian.
All right, yeah, so we got a good episode and we'll get right into it. So hey guys, here we are with Dr. Lena Karkalas, a practicing dentist with a private practice that has an interesting side job as a forensic odontologist. So Dr. Karkalas, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. We've tried this before, but due to my caveman-like qualities, I'm horrible with technology. So we kind of had to reschedule a couple of times, but it's part of life.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right. So happy you could be here. And this is actually our first episode in 2022. Me and Nitty are very happy to have you here. So let's jump into things.
Sure.
So doctor, what is odontology and how is it used in forensics?
So forensic odontology, or forensic dentistry, which most people call it, is a liaison between dentistry and the law. We are dentists that help law enforcement with numerous number of things. We can help with identification, age assessment, bite marks. We can also help with child abuse, whether that be elderly or domestic. And so there are a few things that we can help law enforcement solve cases, maybe identify a person that they didn't know who it was so that they could solve a case.
That's very interesting. So what kind of markers do you look for? Do you look for bite marks or remains of the teeth? And if you do,
so we would be called in by the medical examiner's office and be asked, depending on what the case was, we would ask to look at maybe a pattern injury, or most of the time it's for identification purposes. So if somebody is beyond recognition, you can't retrieve fingerprints, is not a visible case, you can't visually ID that person, then we would be called in to take our radiographs and compare them to radiographs that they have as a possible suspect or decedent, for that matter. Maybe not, it could be a victim, obviously, but a decedent. So then we would be able to compare those two and help law enforcement figure out who that person was.
What's a radiograph?
X-ray.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so she asked about the bite mark. So in terms of bite mark analysis, how does it really work?
So bite marks are probably the most controversial part of forensic dentistry. Skin's a very, very, what we call poor medium. It's very elastic. It can distort a lot of pattern injuries. So we have to be careful when we call something a bite mark, because it may not be a bite mark, or it may resemble a bite mark. So we call it a pattern injury until there's further analysis that's done. However, I will say that my personal opinion is that with bite marks right now, there's a lack of current research to really focus on that. Most people think that, you see something that looks like a bite mark, it's a bite mark, and they call it a bite mark. A lot of people have been put in jail because of bite marks, solely on the bite mark. And right now, the Innocence Project is working to exonerate those people. I think that it's time for us to do a bit more research on that. I also think that we need to be very careful when we're looking at a pattern injury so that we're not too fast on diagnosing something that may look like a bite mark. Look, people are going to be biting people. Bite marks exist. But, whether it's done maliciously or defensively. So we need to understand first a little more what goes into that. I think there needs to be a little bit more research before it's used in a courtroom solely as evidence.
That makes
Okay,
sense.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's very, very informative. So is there any way, as we're talking about resources as well, to get confused between the bite marks between humans and animals when you find?
Oh, sure. There's yes. There have been times when I have been called into the hospital to determine whether it is an animal bite mark or if it's a human bite mark for purposes of, if there's a child abuse involved or that sort of thing. And you can distinctively tell between an animal bite mark or a human bite mark in certain circumstances. Again, you have to be very, very careful. If you have, let's say, a dog bite, you can usually see maybe canine marks, which would be a larger area. And canines have 6 incisors versus 4 incisors of a human bite mark. However, depending on where the bite has been done or whether there is a bite different surfaces, it can certainly, if you don't get the canine marks and that's not there, it can be mistaken for a human bite mark. And that's, again, where we have to be very careful, because not all animal bites show up as a canine puncture wound. So, you may just get a partial bite on something. So it's really, really, you have to be very, very careful on, by looking at these and where it's located on the body and what kind of pattern injury is there. So it's very, that's why a lot of people have been criticized. You really have, especially when it comes to somebody who's not familiar with bite marks, and they call it a human bite mark, and it might be something else. It could be, a hoop. Somebody was wearing a hoop, and it, on their neck was a very large hoop, and they died against it, and maybe it didn't mark completely, so it just looks like a bite mark. So somebody might call it a bite mark. So it's really a very, very difficult subject as far as distinguishing between what is, what isn't, what is inconclusive, what's excluded from what it actually is.
So you think that experience and more research would be helpful in guiding a forensic ontologist? Absolutely,
especially when it comes to bite marks, because it's a really very, again, like I said, the skin on any part of your body it can distort significantly. So you have to be very careful.
Is it true that, I guess, when like in mass deaths, like acts of terrorism or like natural disasters, that odontologists can sometimes be called to the scene to like pretty much, would you guys be like the last effort to identify a body in a situation like that?
Yeah, so in mass disasters or mass fatality incidences, some of us are involved in the D.M.O.R.T, which is the Disaster Mortuary Operating Response Team. And there are different divisions or teams in there. We're separated in the United States. There's, 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth. And depending on when there is a mass disaster, then we may be called into that scenario where there's a makeshift morgue put together. So let's, for example, bring up I don't know, maybe tornado in Joplin, let's say, back in the day.
Okay.
You know, many people passed away there and they're being found. So a makeshift mortuary will be erected. So whether that's in a warehouse or something that's built temporarily.
Right.
And different departments, different sections of that get separated. So as people are found, they are sent there, they get their x-rays taken, they get their fingerprints taken if there's fingerprints. There are certain sections, and one of those is forensic dentistry. So if somebody is not identifiable by any other means, and sometimes even with them being possibly, you know, you want to have as much as you can for identification purposes. So let's say you do have fingerprints. If you have teeth identification, then you can certainly put those together and say, yes, that's definitely the person. Dentistry is usually 100%. There is no percentage of error there. If you're going to say that that person is that person, you need to be 100%. So you take your x-rays, you compare them to other x-rays from maybe their, you know, dental offices that were in that area, and then you move them on. So it really just goes from one step to the next step when there's a mass fatality.
Is it like a fingerprint kind of thing? Like no people are gonna have the same mouth structure or teeth imprints or something, or
yeah, so
radiographs?
Ironically, fingerprints is not 100%. You know, I don't know if you know the story behind, I think it was in 2004, I believe, there was a bombing in Spain that there was fingerprints associated with that bomb, and a partial print, I guess enough to say that, oh, this is that person. And they found that it was a person in California. They went to speak to them, and that person said, I've never ever been to Spain. So those fingerprints on that bomb was actually a terrorist from I don't remember, but I believe it was Yemen. And so those fingerprints led them to somewhere in California, but the reality is it was somebody in Yemen. So fingerprints are not 100%, but dentistry is. So when you have, you know, not everybody's going to have the same and that the beauty of that is that when you have restorations, let's say, there are many different ways to identify. You don't necessarily have to have a full set of x-rays to identify somebody. You might just have one or two x-rays that you can focus on and identify that person, because there are a lot of things like anatomy, morphology of roots, morphology of the inside of the tooth, and of course, any fillings that may be in your mouth. So there are so many different surfaces that one person can have as a filling, and not every filling, you're never going to get the same exact filling shape or size on two different people.
That makes sense.
It makes them unique in a way.
What's that?
It makes it unique in different ways. Like there are
yes,
different
absolutely,
parameters, which is kind of increasing the uniqueness of.
Yes, and you can identify people also by their sinuses. Not, you know, their sinuses are very similar to where you have a very, very high percentage of identification, because sinuses don't really change throughout your life, the shapes of them. So you can identify people through, you know, that's very helpful too.
Where's your sinus? Is that like hair?
So your maxillary sinuses that are all here, you know, where you're breathing and help with, you know, you've got sinuses in your forehead and it up above your top jaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So do you think that like with the information that you have, you can also like from the teeth identify as to how old the person is, like the aging of
yeah, so age assessment or age estimation is also part of what we do. It's not exact, so we can't give an exact age. We can only give a range of age, but it's very helpful to determine whether the person was a child, adolescent, or adult. It's also very helpful in situations where you may be, let's say there were children in a house fire, and there were ages 3, 5, 7, and 10. you might be able to, and they're commingled remains, then you can actually take those and see if you can identify if maybe only the 3, 6, 7 were there, but the 10-year-old was out with mom. So, you know, you can figure out how many, you know, what ages might be in that burned home. Other things that are great are when if somebody's coming over the border, you can, that's what's used right now. That's also a bit controversial, but because the questioning whether taking x-rays on young people without consent is an issue. Because we're, you know, these children that are coming over the border illegally, you need, some of them look younger, but they're saying that they're 18. So they're saying that they're of age to come into this country, but yet there are times when, you know, I'm sure you've been in situations where you think somebody is younger than and then they're actually older, or vice versa. So it's helpful because we can do that by taking x-rays to determine if they are really, you know, of age, because we can look and see the developmental areas of the wisdom teeth and where they are in growth, and also other teeth. So, but, you know, age assessment is affected by also malnutrition, ancestry, race, environmental factors. So that's really where a lot of errors can come into play. So if somebody is very malnutritioned, then they may have developmental issues with their teeth. So it's very difficult to know what their exact age is. So we can only give ranges with age assessment. So that's really where we're at, where we're at with age assessment.
Sorry, I just have one more follow-up question. Yeah. I don't know how true it is, but can you determine where they are from, like the location, the geographic location from the teeth? Because
so you can tell, you can tell if say someone's Asian, you know, someone who may be of other descents. So there are ways to discuss that, but there are very difficult situations too, where like if you can determine if someone's Caucasian, someone may be Mongolian, you know, things like that. However, in today's world, the reality is that we have a lot of mixed races. So it doesn't necessarily fit in one particular category. We have a lot of transient people. So especially in the United States, people who come from different countries, different nationalities, from Asia, who marry people who are maybe of African descent, and they get together. So their particular group of, like if we're going to identify them by ancestry, they may not necessarily fall under one category or another. So that's where the difficulty comes in. However, when those things happen, normally we for sex and also for that kind of thing, I usually have the ME or the anthropologist really determine that. That's not really our part of what we do. We can help with it, but we certainly don't make that decision.
Okay. Right. There's different fields working together in collaboration, kind of.
Absolutely.
With DNA, I guess you can know the phenotype of the person. So it's kind of like adding up layers of identification.
Yes.
Okay, so I know you talked about bite mark, but are there any other major, like, I guess, criticisms when it comes to forensic odontology?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that we also get involved in civil litigation. A lot of civil litigations that happen. So if there's a malpractice suit or a personal injury case, we might be contacted by a lawyer to help them out with, especially if there is an injury involving, you know, teeth. So to determine if, you know, the condition of what happened, the person that they're suing may be liable. So, or we might be on the defense or the prosecution side to help them understand whether someone's liable in this case. So that's one thing that people maybe not understand. The other thing is too, what's hard is there are so many dental schools that have not really gotten involved in allowing the newer dentists or, the young dentists to come into a situation where they understand that forensic dentistry is available to them. I was teaching at Tufts University, the forensic dental program there, and they've gotten, since the pandemic, because I wasn't able to travel there, they kind of cut that class out. I'm in the talks right now to try to see if we can get something going again. But the reality is not a lot of young dentists know that this is something that could be something they might be interested in. It's not a job where most of us don't get paid for this. This is not something that we get paid for necessarily. It's something that we do because we love to do it. There are only few, I think 2 or 3 positions in the United States that actually have a position that's full-time pay, but we all do it because we want to help. And I think what people have to understand, I think our group needs a lot of more research to be done. So that's really important thing to happen right now. But the young dentists need to know that it's available to them. So I think that if we got more colleges to allow them to understand, I think maybe we could get this. We're only 80 forensic dentists in the world that are board certified.
In the world.
We're very approximately.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we'd like to have more people on board. We'd like to help. I think, we're all in it together. And I think that that's where we need to help out. And so I think our group that's all we're trying to do. And law enforcement needs us, we need them. So if we can, we're all here to help to try to solve something or help out. Maybe, I can do something for you so that you can move on to the next step.
Right.
So it's an important field, but we're a very small group of people, but we're very dedicated. So we need to continue, and we need more people, but we can't do that unless people know about us. And that means getting into the schools and understanding that that's something that young dentists can get involved in.
I think that would lead to the next question that we have is, how does one become a forensic, get into forensic dentistry?
So forensic dentistry is, for me at least, my path was through dental school. So I went to NYU Dental School, and that's again why I think it's so important that it opened my eyes to, wow, that's something that is available to me. And I think that's where the young dentists don't really know. And when I was teaching at Tufts, I got so many questions and so many people that were interested in what I was doing that I did get a handful. I mean, not everybody's gonna like going and seeing a dead body. That's, it's not for everybody. But there are a handful of people. And if we get a handful of people that are interested and want to follow through on, taking the tests and getting board certified, we welcome them to come in. But what you need to do is first talk to somebody who can help you kind of veer in the right direction. My path was through dental school and talking to, we had a little forensic program that we went through. And so that's what piqued my interest. And then after, it's not, like I said, because it's not a paid job, a lot of people don't really do it right out of dental school, but you do need to be a dentist, obviously. But after that, you should get involved in maybe the ASFO, which is the American Society of Forensic Odontology. Anybody can be a member, and you can come to a meeting and see if it piques your interest. Usually it's, during February. I'm going actually this weekend, and every other year we have workshops through the American Board of Forensic Odontology, which is who I'm board certified through. And you can either be an observer or you can be a participant. And you start with a workshop, which would be, for example, helping out with the identification workshop this weekend. And we'll do a lecture and we'll talk about, what's involved in identifying someone. What would we be involved in? Like I just discussed with you, maybe a mass fatality. And how we go about doing that, because there are ways that we have coding systems and how we code, and so that we can put it into a database. So those are things that people can get involved in. And then you just follow the path from there. And usually you can find a mentor who you can talk to, and, you know, they'll put you in the right direction. So, okay, so you start here and then come to the lectures, come to the AAFS, which is the American Academy of Forensic Science meeting, which is during that week that we have our meeting. And so that's where you would start and finish, because once you've finished all your workshops, you might even want to, like I took a forensic certification course through McGill University, where it's a hands-on. It's mostly, it's about 80% theory and then 20% hands-on. And there are programs in Texas that you can do program, and also in Knoxville. There's programs that you can go through and learn more and help you so that when you do decide to become board certified, you take the time to get that all under your belt, and then you test. So
that's it's very informative. I'm sure like the audience would learn a lot.
Yeah, it's a long process. It took me 7 years to be board certified. Yeah, and because you need to take all these courses, and it's really important. I mean, especially because people don't realize that we're not just about comparing x-rays. There's a lot more involved in that. So that's where it becomes complicated. Although there are people that have done it in 4 years. So it really just depends on how fast or what's in your life. Like for me, I had 2 young children at the time, so I couldn't necessarily just focus on that.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Very helpful. And it's also actually pretty new for me, because I've always been in DNA or like crimes investigation, and like I've never thought about this or paid much attention to it. So
yeah,
like,
absolutely. Yeah, and it's you know, there's a lot of things that you can get involved in. Like for example, I'm in a cold case task force here in Rhode Island, and I work with, you know, forensic scientists like you, DNA specialists, also a lot of detectives. The majority of the people are detectives that come together and talk about cold cases. I'm probably the only civilian there other than the scientists, but they're more into it than I am, because I have a private practice and do this sort of on the side. So I call myself the only civilian. But it's, if I can help, I'd like to help. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. Thank you. I don't know if Julia has any questions.
I'm good, man. I feel like that's a lot of food for thought. We definitely got to thank you for coming out with us again. I know we tried this a couple of times before and I dropped the ball, but I'm glad we finally made it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much once again for the information. And I'm sure like if we post this video, it will be very, very helpful for the audience to know more about the field. And hopefully they'll contact you soon enough to be a part of the group.
Absolutely. Let that, you know, you have my email, so you're more than welcome to share it. I'd be more than happy to get involved in anybody who wants more specifics on how to get to where they need to be as far as forensic dentistry is concerned. I can't help them in any other field, but I'd be more than happy to discuss whatever they'd like.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for your time once again.
All right, you're welcome. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, have a great one.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.